Hello, my name is Dave Graham, and I'm a partner in Continuous Improvement Associates, a company dedicated to continuous improvement. We want to help your organization identify, measure, and ultimately drive continuous improvement in all of your processes. And so why should you be interested in doing this within your company? Ultimately, the methods and processes that deliver value to your customer is what sets you apart from your competition. Do that better. In other words, execute your business functions better than anyone else, and your business will ultimately deliver not only superior results, but sustainable and ongoing results. We call this the lean approach to driving business improvement. We always start with what we're going to call voice of the customer. Obviously, without customers, your business will not exist. And without constantly striving to both understand what your customers want, need, and desire, as well as how they see your organization satisfying these needs, you cannot truly drive competitive advantage. Typically, there's a range of customer acceptance which constantly moves based on competitive offerings. Here, we will illustrate this range, which we're going to call the upper limit and the lower limit of customer acceptance, or the range of customer acceptance. Think in terms of any simple transaction. For example, buying a car. You don't want to spend so little that the car will break down or be a safety hazard, but you don't want to spend extra money on things you may not value. Some processes will only have an upper limit. Think about how long you're willing to wait in line for anything, for example. There's no real lower limit, but there's certainly an upper limit. It's really important to understand customer expectations. They're both internal and external. So external customers clearly voice their opinions in terms of purchasing and helping your business succeed. But internal customers as well need to be listened to. Otherwise, they create silos in your own organization. Once we understand the range of customer acceptance or even delight, we can then map out our current process against our voice of customer metrics. In other words, a true understanding of how effective you are at satisfying your customers. Understanding how your processes line up with customer expectations can be called your process capability. This is mapping voice of the customer against voice of the process. It's an easy leap to understand that a gap between customer expectations and process capability can lead to loss of competitive advantage, loss of profitability, and potentially loss of business. Process capability can vary depending on expectations. Identifying this gap and fixing this gap is how our group can help your organization. Call it industrial engineering, process improvement, operational excellence, or Lean Sigma. We're going to help your organization gain competitive advantage through the focused application of tools and methods of continuous improvement. We do this with a simplified and sustainable method that will ensure ultimate program success. If you look at your process capability here on this histogram, anything that lies outside that range of customer acceptance is considered a defect. And defects have a major adverse effect on profitability. It results in rework, customer dissatisfaction, and potentially customers leaving to go look at your competition. But let's look at actual processes. So if we look at the range of customer acceptance and processes, they can have a huge variance, and so you have defects on the lower side and the upper side. Your process may be good and potentially centered, but it can skew to one way, or it can be centered right in the middle. Let's look at a real simple process. If we start with a very simple box called the process, and it can be anything. Here we show process, and every process has outputs. And typically, we're going to measure these outputs in three main areas. Cost, and we're going to call it cost per unit in this example. Time, and again, we'll normalize this data and call it minutes to produce a unit. And quality. Quality can be measured a bunch of different ways. And no matter what you deliver, the output must be in terms that the customer accepts. Otherwise, there's going to be rework, as mentioned earlier. Rework is waste, which is why our organization spends a lot of time in this area. Often, companies are not actually aware that they have produced defects and have pushed customers away. Quality can be measured many ways, but typically we're going to try and measure defects again in a normalized fashion. For example, production defects per 1,000 opportunities. And a service area could be the number of paperwork errors per day. A broader scope may be something like number of employee hires that quit within 3 months. We're going to work with your company to quantify this number and critically work with you to apply a specific cost to your organization for these defects. You can see how this metric would adversely affect the prior 2 metrics above, and crucially, fixing this could improve the previous 2 output metrics. We're not done with this, although the actual output metric certainly helps identify targets and costs. The inputs to the process are the variables that we change to impact the outputs identified on the right. But which ones? We're going to help you identify the critical input variables that will have the biggest impact on the output metrics. This is a cost-effective approach to continuous improvement. But this is a very simplistic model. We all know that there's many processes that interact with each other. So let's look at a complex input process output. If we look at this and we start with our very simplistic processes, and then we understand and overlay all the different steps that go into satisfying the customer, and we need to understand how they interact with each other to ultimately produce those final output metrics. You can see it's a very complex model. What we're going to go do for you is I map this and potentially identify those problem areas and fix those for you. Not only will you get that, you'll get the metrics across the entire process. To initiate a continuous improvement program, we typically will introduce the concepts of continuous improvement in a 1-day interactive training day. It's about 6 hours, which we're going to call basic training or white belt training. It's a fun and interactive session that introduces the concepts of lean, which are based on the Toyota production system, and variance reduction, which is based on Six Sigma. The outcomes for these sessions are awareness of waste and variance on process outputs. But it would be difficult to execute any projects that might fix any identified problem output metrics by attending this course by itself. The next step in our program is green belt training or advanced training. This is a 5-day course that dives into methods and tools that would enable a highly motivated employee to be able to execute a process improvement project. Typically, we've found success in driving bottom line results and significant process changes by having classes of 7 to 15 employees with identified projects that you can take through the class. This means we can apply class instruction directly to identify projects as we move through the course. The return on investment with this approach is usually within 4 to 6 weeks. By having the instructor identify and mentor the class through projects, returns are immediate and change management is incorporated directly and immediately. Without mentoring, successful project completions are around 20% based on our past implementations. Our breadth of offering does include direct project execution and program management as well. You can hire our black belts at any time. If you have a high visibility or critical project that requires advanced level resources, we can certainly do that for your company. Most green belt trained resources need 5 to 6 relatively simple projects to become adept at using both the tools, methods, and people skills to effectively drive process improvements on larger scale projects. We can also offer our resources to assist in managing a complete continuous improvement program. This involves ongoing support and training, maintaining metrics and control mechanisms for completed projects, reporting, and management support. This can be done on a temporary or even monthly type basis, depending on your needs. So why do we do this? Our associates drive continuous improvement because we see waste and want to help companies drive waste out of their process. It's all about productivity. We see how variation in processes cause headaches and problems for their customers and employees. We want your employees to be advocates filled with passion for their contributions towards growing your company. We believe that by engaging with our approach, organizations can become world-class preferred partners to their customers, staff, and business partners. Interested? Give us a call. You can look at our website, www.ciassociates.ca, or you can call me at the number directly. Thank you.